This book came out in 1967. It blew the lid off something that the Jewish establishment had hemmed and hawed about for many years. The book is entitled While 6 Million Died. It was not written by a Jew, but an observer who was startled to see that so many things went wrong. And the question was not so much how could we have saved 6 million Jews, but indeed, with all the opportunities that we had, why did 6 million die? Hello, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak along with Zeb Brenner. We don't know when you're watching this program, but I will tell you this. The questions that we are going to explore today are questions that have remained for the last 40 years and may never be solved. The people we have on are historical figures. We are fortunate to have them with us today, but their pictures will remain in Jewish history books for many, many years. We have witness to the Holocaust. Our guest in this segment is Dr. Gerhardt Riegner. He was the first, according to most history books, to let the Jewish establishment know that Hitler had indeed decided to destroy the Jews of Europe. We'll be back with him right after the following messages.
Some are born to lead with noble spirit.
The following questions are based on the information in this program. Question number 1. What was the name of the death camp in southern Poland in which 2 million Jews perished? Question number 2. Who was President of the United States when this happened? Question number 3. What was the real name of the concentration camp doctor known as the Angel of Death? Question number 4. What method did the Nazis use to identify each concentration camp victim? To answer these questions, call the following numbers. Out of New York State, you can call toll-free at 1-800-642-EMES. That's 1-800-642-MS. In the 914 area code, call 352-0630. In the 212 area code, call 772-0126. Or you can write to MS at MS, Post Office Box 122, that's P.O. Box 122, Muncie, New York, 10952.
Tell us, how did you discover that the Holocaust was taking place?
The news about the Holocaust reached us in various stages. The tragedy did not unfold itself in one blow. When I left Germany in 1933 as a young man of 21, I knew then that was the end of German Jewry. I was not particularly intelligent, but I had good Jewish background, had a good political education, and I left a few weeks after the elections of 1933 and after the boycott day
In other
of
words, you
April.
felt that 1933, the end of German Jewry, was near.
There was no doubt for me that this was the end of German Jewry.
And yet, according
Not that I knew Holocaust extermination, but that the aim of the Nazis was to get rid of the Jews, to throw them out of their post, to throw them out of Germany, to deprive them of their rights, there was no doubt whatsoever in my mind.
Dr. Riegner, Arthur Morse in his book, While 6 Million Died, opens with you. He says, on August 1st, 1942, history thrust a terrible burden upon Gerhardt Riegner, the representative in Switzerland of the World Jewish Congress. On that day, Riegner, who had himself fled from Nazi Germany, learned from a leading German industrialist that many months before, Hitler had ordered the extermination of all the Jews in Europe. The information relayed in Lausanne at the risk of the German's life even specified the instrument of murder, prussic acid, the lethal ingredient of Zyklon B gas. Dr. Riegner, you forwarded that information to Stephen Wise in New York on August 28th. He had that information. Is that correct?
On August 8th.
August 8th.
He had the information on August 28th because the message was suppressed by the State Department.
All right, but he did have permission.
Similar message was sent by me the same day to Sidney Silverman, who was the head of the British section of the World Jewish Congress in London, a member of parliament who was head of the British section, and he got the message 10 days later.
All right, you are the man, you are the prophet of doom, the Isaiah, the Jeremiah, the one who has the news. Eicha Yoshua Badod, woe how she will dwell alone, what is going to happen. Now let's follow this through. On August 28th, Stephen Wise has permission, is not legally blocked from informing the American Jewish community that Hitler has planned at Wannsee the destruction, the total annihilation of European Jewry. Stephen Wise does not give that information out publicly to the Jewish community until the middle of November, 2.5 months. He does not tell the Jewish people of America about this. Dr. Riegner, why did he suppress your message?
The message was suppressed not by Stephen Wise, but by the State Department.
But on August 28th...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The State Department had the message already on the 10th of August. It didn't deliver the message to any Jewish leader. And when it came through another source, Wise and Goldman went to the State Department and spoke to Sumner Welt and informed them. They didn't know that Sumner Welt and the State Department had the message before. Nobody believed it in the State Department, and they discussed it, and the State Department insisted that they should verify it from other sources. And they decided to inform and to consult, particularly the Vatican on this matter, whether they had any news. Wise, apparently, but I am not entitled to speak for Wise because he never discussed this with me. Wise felt that it was important to keep the source of information open and therefore accepted the advice not to publish it immediately.
In other words...
We know today that a few days later he informed Jewish leaders and called together a meeting of Jewish leaders.
My question...
On the 5th of September, at the same time he consulted other leaders. There is a very interesting and very moving letter to Felix Frankfurter from Wise on the 3rd or 4th of September, where he asked him, he writes about the message he has, in which he asked him, Felix Frankfurter, the Supreme Judge, was quite an important personality in this country, and was in close contact with the President, desperately asking him, and what can we do about it? There's another letter from Stephen Wise, and I'm only quoting what I have read, documented in the letters of Stephen Wise to James Holmes Holmes, the Unitarian pastor with whom he was very
friendly with him.
friendly,
We have his
connected, and
diary
a very, very fine man. And he writes that I am absolutely desperate. I have before me a telegram which announces whatever it announced, and I'm desperate. What can we do? Question was not so easily solved. Question was Stephen Wise, and I'm not here to judge him. I was not in his position. Stephen Wise was the protagonist in the fight against Hitler. He was the first to take up the challenge. He was in the German mind the major fighter against Nazism, long even before Hitler came to power. I remember when I was in Germany that he made headlines in the Völkische Beobachter and the Angriff, the papers of Hitler and the papers of Gerhardt, in which he made headlines. Der Rabbiner Wiese, as they called him, who is the major fool of the German people and of the National Socialist.
Well, my only question to you is, why do we get the impression, and did Stephen Wise not let the American public as a whole know that information for 2.5 months because he wasn't sure it was true, or because he felt it would be?
Because he had promised the State Department not to make it public before they had received some kind of verification from other sources. That was the reason. And when he spoke a few days later to Jewish leaders, and this is a fact that he did, from the first days of September, a great number of Jewish leaders were informed.
Dr. Riegner, it's very hard to sit and look in retrospect and analyze, but I'd like to you to bear with us for just one moment. Looking back at the actions or the inaction of Jewish leaders during the Holocaust, would you say there was an adequate response to help our brethren in Europe during the Holocaust?
Let me say, these questions are not so easily replied to by yes and by no. The situation in 1984 is fundamentally different from the situation in the 30s and in the 40s. And do not transpose the Jewish community as means of action, its mood, its power, into the situation of in the 30s or in the 40s, where the major characteristics of the Jewish position was complete powerlessness. This is what we have to accept. That was a fact.
American Jewry
was powerless. American Jewry did not even dare to speak about Jews during 2 years, the first years of the war, because they were afraid of being accused of dragging America into the war. America was in a situation, and you know this better than I know, but I follow it from far, was in a situation of complete isolationism. It was not America of today. It was America deeply influenced by anti-Semitic movements, by a German Bund which was very active with German propaganda, by a Catholic priest, Coughlin, who spoke twice a week on the radio with anti-Semitic speeches, with another publicist, Smith, who did this, forgot the first name, who did exactly the same.
Right. Let me just, I don't mean to interrupt you, Doctor. We have just some time constraints. I want to come back and have you expand on what you're saying. Our guest is Dr. Gerhardt Riegner, who first let the world know about the plan to destroy European Jewry. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak here along with Zev Brenner. We'll be back with this fascinating and rather tormenting subject after the following messages.
Today's Torah study is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Saul DENTZ of New City, New York. Yasher Kochachem. Thank you and congratulations to the DENTZ family for sponsoring this Torah study so that all may enjoy the mitzvah. To sponsor Torah study, call 914-352-0630. You may do it in honor of someone or in memory of a loved one. You can sponsor a small portion of the program or a week or a month. It's within everyone's reach to do this great mitzvah. MS can arrange to have Kaddish recited. Call 914-352-0630. Due to inquiry and demand on the part of our viewers, I've formed a class that you can attend in person. It's entitled The Mystical Experience. It's not for everyone, but it's for those who want to understand the deeper meaning in life, as expounded by the sages. 352-0630. For those who have personal problems with their own lives, with the lives of their children, their loved ones, their friends. The doors of MS are always open. I'm available for consultation. Call the number you see on the screen.
Cannon A1, born to lead.
Manhattan viewers may call in the 212 area code 772-0126. Or out of New York State, you can call toll-free
800-642-EMES. Again,
40 years after the fact, a major meeting of children of Holocaust survivors addressed by Elie Wiesel on this day that we're taping. Obviously, pardon?
I spoke there to me myself.
You spoke there today. Okay. Obviously, the subject is very, very alive and very agonizing, and people want to know what happened. And it didn't end with the survivors themselves. Their children grew up in houses where their parents were obviously suffering from having your childhood ripped away from you. There are stories that are well known about children who watched a mother stuff food in the refrigerator and keep it there while it's rotting because she's afraid she wouldn't have it the next day, or put food underneath the pillow, from the horrors that, thank God, this generation didn't see personally. And obviously it affects us, and they want to know why. What could have been done? How could I have had my mother and father not go through this? Or the survivors themselves said, why couldn't I have had a normal childhood? So we're still agonizing over the question. As an individual from history, we have asked you to come here. We know that reporters don't always give back what you say. We know that you can say one thing and that it can be distorted. And so it is in the spirit of that realization that I ask you this question. Here are two different articles from Jewish newspapers. One said, quoting you, Dr. Riegner, one says, did U.S. Jews do enough? The man who sent the 1942 Holocaust alert from Geneva says no. In this article, you are quoted by a reporter who says that no, you said no, not enough was done. Now, that's one article. I want to show you another one from another paper. First man to warn of Holocaust. American Jews did everything possible to help imperiled co-religionists. So here we have what we call in Talmudic terms a stira, a contradiction. One paper says, quotes you as saying that the Jews of America did not do enough. Another paper quotes you as saying that they did everything possible. So we have the man here with us on this television program. Which one is right and which one is wrong?
Of course we didn't do enough, no question about it. The question is what we could have done and how many we could have saved. And when we could have done something more. And the question is usually wrongly put. American Jewry and America and the Western democracies could have stopped Hitler before it came to the war.
How so?
In 1933, in 1935, in 1936, when Hitler moved into the Rhineland, when he occupied the Rhineland, it was 36, 3 years after he came to power. Read the memoirs of the German generals, how they were trembling about what the reaction of the Western democracies would be when they occupied the Rhineland against the rules of the Versailles Treaty, against the rules of the Locarno Treaty. Nothing happened. The democracies didn't react. There you could have stopped Hitler. And perhaps still in 1937. Perhaps in 1938, I have my doubts, when the Czechoslovakian crisis. But the Jews were divided. American Jews were completely divided in 1933, how to react to Hitler. The Western democracies were divided. The Western democracies were pursuing a policy of appeasement towards Hitler. No war, no challenge to Hitler. And if we as Jewish people would have reacted differently in 1933 and were united in a forceful organization which we were not in 1933, 34, 36, and perhaps even later, the whole fate of the European Jewry may have been avoided.
My question to you, one follow-up question. Sitting where you were was Edwin Black, who wrote a book about the transfer agreement, that 60,000 German Jews were allowed out because the Zionists in Israel in 1936, I believe it was, made a deal with the Germans. 33. It was what year? There was a deal with the Germans. The deal was,
34, yeah.
There was a boycott, a world boycott of Germany. And I believe that Stephen Wise of the World Jewish Congress opposed the boycott. I'm not sure. He was for it? He was for it.
Protagonist
Okay.
for the boycott.
He was for the boycott.
Yeah.
All right, my question is,
help you in the historical thing is that the World Jewish Congress and the conferences, the preparatory conferences of the World Jewish Congress supported the boycott and strongly helped in the organization.
I understand that.
And proclaimed it in Geneva a number of times.
And when the Germans came to the Zionists in Palestine and said to them, we will let 60,000 German Jews go.
I never said this. This is all distortion of history. The question came up that the Zionists tried to help to get Jews out of Germany, as many as they could. And they were absolutely entitled to do this.
Well, let me just, for our viewers who don't know, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's never was an offer of 60,000 Jews. It was a certificate of a capitalist certificate. When you had £1,000, you could get such a certificate, and this was in the transfer of the £1,000 were through commercial goods with the German sold to Palestine.
But what Black claims in his book is that the outcome was that the Zionists in Palestine agreed to try to influence the world to stop the boycott of Germany in return for the fact that these Jews would go out of Germany. Are you saying he is wrong?
It's not true. The Zionists did not want to stop the boycott. They said we have to save individual Jews, and we saved them. And while this was not exactly in conformity with the world boycott, historically speaking, both were right. Those who declared the boycott in order to damage the German economy, and those who declared we have to save as many Jews as we can, and who made certain contraventions to the boycott movement. This may be logically not satisfactory, but historically both decisions were right.
Dr. Riegner, we focus in on about the American Jewish leaders as well as the American government. Did they do and not do enough to save Jews? Let's look at Europe. Let's look at Britain. Did the English government do enough?
No government, no Jewish organization, no Jewish leader, not myself, did we enough. When you have a result of 6 million dead, you cannot be proud of what you have done. Our generation failed and lost the war against Hitler. There's no doubt about this, and we cannot avoid it. And we should say it to our children. Protest alone does not guarantee you success. We did our best. We mobilized 1.5 million Jews in New York, what has never happened since and has never happened before, in order to fight Hitler. And it was Stephen Wise who was at the head of this movement. But protest alone doesn't succeed. The question is whether you have power. The question is whether you can influence governments. Now, we have certainly not done enough, and the governments haven't done enough. The question is what in the war you could still save.
Dr. Riegner, briefly, I just wanted to focus on did the Churchill in particular issue orders to bomb the camps, and was his orders ignored?
Yes. That is one of the strangest things in history.
It is one of the most strangest things. I spoke to you about that. We have a situation here in which Churchill wanted to have Auschwitz bombed, and the British down in the chain of command stopped it. And we have a situation in which in Germany, the Germans wanted to make a deal to save Jews, and for money, for Jews for trucks, Jews for this, and the British would not go along with it. Now, isn't that insane? In other words, the Allies were impeding the saving of Jews
by refusing to bomb Auschwitz, and the Nazis were trying to, for whatever reason, to get the few saved for their own benefit. Isn't that an inferno of insanity?
Well, the Germans didn't sell all didn't make the proposals of the deal. Some Germans. Some people, when the discipline of the Nazi very strict military party establishment started to crumble, there were already appearances of disintegration and personal desire to protect themselves. This is really what happened, and how far these offers were seriously, you could only test them when you negotiate with them. Now, I personally am very skeptical that we could have, in this way, saved great numbers. I'm not saying that we couldn't have saved small numbers, because small numbers were saved. Kastner brought out a few thousand, the Aguda brought out a few thousand, Storch of the World Jewish Congress in Sweden brought out a few thousand. It was in the last phase of the Nazi government, of the Nazi regime, that such questions, such possibilities for bribing were possible, also because we had the support of the War Refugee Board, which we didn't have, it means of the American government, which we didn't have before.
Dr. Riegner, I want to thank you very, very much, because our time limitations. It's a subject that I feel, on behalf of our viewers, I want to express how honored we are to have had you here, and you are living history, and we hope that that you will be able to tell people and to clear up this and to make it. Make the story of what happened known, so that, God forbid, it never happens again. On behalf of Zev Brenner, I want to express the great honor that it was for us to have you.
I'm writing my memoirs now, and I will tell the whole story as I see it.
Thank you.
And you will, in 2-3 years, have it.
After reading about you in the pages of the book, it's just wonderful to see you in person.
Thank you for joining us.
We'll be back. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, along with Zev Brenner. Our guest has been Dr. Gerhardt Riegner, the first to let the world know about the Holocaust and the plan to do it. We'll be back with another person who walks the pages of history, Yitzchak Ben Ami, coming up after the following messages.
Want to know more about your Jewish heritage but can't find the time to read? Listen to this offer from Emes. Receive 4 audio cassette tapes narrated by Emes National Director Rabbi Yaakov Spivak on these subjects: Jewish marriage, Jewish divorce, refuting missionary claims, and keeping a kosher home. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak's interesting, dynamic style has educated thousands all over the world. Bring his inspired teaching of Judaism into your home, office, or car with these audio tapes. Order now and you'll also receive a 1-year membership in Emes, bringing you bulletins on anti-Semitism, the combating of missionary activities, and other news. To order, send check or money order for $36 to Emes. That's EMES, Box 122, Muncie, New York, 10952. Emes, Box 122, Muncie, New York, 10952. Or call now using your American Express card, Visa or MasterCard. In New York State, 212-772-0126. That's 772-0126. Or out of state, call toll-free 1-800-642-EMES.
This is Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. I want to tell you about our MS classes in Manhattan. I'll be teaching them on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. at the MS 34th Street headquarters in Manhattan. Some of the subjects will be reincarnation, male-female relationships in Judaism, answering missionaries, and Jewish business ethics in the Talmud. These are fascinating subjects, and if you are interested in taking these classes, call us at 212-772-0126. That's 212-772-0126. Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Subjects as you see on the screen. And our phone number again to attend these classes is 212-772-0126. And if you're interested, call us now. There are operators standing by. 772-01.
Welcome back. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak along with Zev Brenner. We've just heard from Dr. Gerhardt Riegner, and now I have another book I want to show you. It's called Years of Wrath, Days of Glory. It is also about the Holocaust, but it is written from a completely different perspective. It is our responsibility to you to give you both sides of a story. You've just heard one, and now the other. This book is written by a hero in Jewish history, a man who did not follow the Jewish establishment and operated his way. He is Yitzchak Ben Ami. Mr. Ben Ami has been called the father of Jewish activism in America for what he did, as well as a great hero in Israel and the establishment of the State of Israel. I want to welcome you to the program, Mr. Ben Ami. I'm a little bit, and both of us, Zev and I, are a little bit shaken at the emotional power that we have just heard Dr. Riegner express his points of view. Instead of us asking you questions, let's just turn it over to you for any reaction to what our viewers heard in the first half. And you might just preface it with what he said, so in case those just tuned in didn't hear it.
I believe that Dr. Riegner was emotional. He does get emotional often when the questions are put to him as bluntly as you did. After all, he was in a position of responsibility as far as the World Jewish Congress is concerned. Although he was then a young man, he was not the top man in the delegation. Richard Lichtheim, who was the senior member of the Jewish Agency, was the man who represented both the World Jewish Congress and the Jewish Agency on all matters concerning the occupied territories. However, over the years, the fact that he took a message to the American legation has put him in the spotlight. And since then, he has had to answer a number of questions that have arisen, and he gets a little bit disturbed. Well, if I would be in his place, I would also get disturbed, because the record of the Jewish establishment, beginning with Chaim Weizmann, Stephen Wise, Nachum Goldman, and Ben Gurion during those years, is a record of catastrophic results, terrible, confused reaction to the historic events, and in general, a floundering and floating around without knowing exactly what to do and how to react, and adjusting from month to month, from sometimes even from event to event, certainly from year to year, to what was going on.
Mr. Ben Ami, you were involved in that period of time as a member of the Irgun, a group which is founded on the principles of Zev Jabotinsky, and you were involved in the saving of thousands of Jews from Europe, smuggling them into Palestine, as well as in the creation of the State of Israel. Can you tell us, during those years, was the Irgun helped by the establishment in smuggling Jews to Palestine? Were they hindered by the establishment?
Your question is to the point. Because what you are raising is the basic difference between our concept of what was developing in the 30s to the concepts of the Jewish establishment, including the Zionist establishment. This is the crux of the whole thing. It is even the crux today. We predicted, Jabotinsky predicted, beginning in 32, that terrible things are going to happen. He didn't know about crematoria, he didn't know about gassing, he didn't know about burnings, but he said terrible things are going to happen. Whether there's going to be a war or not going to be a war is even beside the point, because the climax of the economic and social and philosophic and traditional powers that were churning into Central and Eastern Europe are such that the Jews are going to suffer seriously, and in the process they may be even destroyed. And this was, the beginning of this prediction was in 32. It evolved further in 35 when the New Zionist organization was formed in Vienna. Jabotinsky, for the first time,
the revisionist, the organization.
The New Zionist was a outgrowth of the revision, in which the first time he said, we have to think about an exodus, about an evacuation of Europe. The first time, the reaction to it was terrible, beginning with Stephen Wise in New York, with the Davar Labor Daily in Israel, in Palestine, throughout the world, in Poland, in Jewish organization, Jewish meetings. He was pelted with eggs and tomatoes, was called every name under the sun, that he is collaborating with anti-Semites to take the Jews out. And his answer was, when a village lives in the shadow of a volcano, and you are going to try and tell those people and the village that the time has come to move, is this a betrayal of the people, or is this the right thing to do? The whole concept of mass movement out of Europe was followed by us even in our immigration work, which we started rather late in 1937. We didn't have the money then, we didn't have the money before, and we didn't have the money afterwards to really do it on a mass scale. But we brought tens of thousands of people out.
We helped during the war when the Holocaust was taking place. Jews were being killed daily in the thousands.
We couldn't, this was too late already. Our immigration work stopped around the middle of 1940.
Do you agree with Dr. Riegner's portrayal of Stephen Wise?
Stephen Wise is a tragic figure in Jewish history. Dr. Riegner knew him by correspondence, by telegrams. I knew Stephen Wise by the men who opposed our work in this country when we came here on behalf of the Irgun to try and mobilize funds for the so-called illegal immigration, when we tried to arouse public opinion for our activities. It isn't true, as Dr. Riegner says, you know, that the word Jew wasn't mentioned. We mentioned it. We mentioned it all throughout our campaign here. Here, take this ad, for instance. It caused a terrible turmoil. It almost caused an apoplexy amongst the establishment leadership. The word Jew was suddenly on the front page and a full page in the New York Times. We brought issues from that moment onward till the State of Israel was formed. We did not stop our campaign. I'm familiar with Father Coughlin. I'm familiar with Gerald Smith. I'm familiar with the Bund. Mr. Riegner said in Switzerland. I went to Manhattan Center and I went to Yorkville and 86th Street and Lexington Avenue and York Avenue. I have faced them. I went to the meetings. Somebody once joked, he said, one is my one ear a little bigger than the other. I said, well, it was an encounter. I've never forgotten this encounter. But this is where I was, so don't tell me, no one can tell me about anti-Semitism in the United States. We were aware of it, but nothing happened because of that.
Let me ask you, we're going to, let me ask you to hold on to this. We're going to come back to Yitzchak Ben Ami, his comments on what happened in our exploration of could more have been done. It's a subject which is a very painful one, but we all have to know, because we are asking and our children will ask, why did 6 million Jews die? And when we come back, we're going to show you that there were demonstrations during World War II, or during that time. There was a demonstration in Madison Square Garden, and we have footage of it. And you will see what that demonstration was, and you will also hear Mr. Ben Ami's comment on it. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak along with Zev Brenner. Stay tuned. We'll be back after the following messages. Torah Study, call 914-352-0630. You may do it in honor of someone or in memory of a loved one. You can sponsor a small portion of the program or a week or a month. It's within everyone's reach to do this great mitzvah. MS can arrange to have Kaddish recited. Call 914-352-0630. Due to inquiry and demand on the part of our viewers, I've formed a class that you can attend in person. It's entitled The Mystical Experience. It's not for everyone, but it's for those who want to understand the deeper meaning in life, as expounded by the sages. 352-0630. For those who have personal problems with their own lives, with the lives of their children, their loved ones, their friends, the doors of MS are always open. I'm available for consultation. Call the number you see on the screen. Manhattan viewers may call in the 212 area code 772-0126.
Speaking with Yitzchak Ben Ami, a former member of the Irgun who helped smuggle Jews out of Europe prior to the Holocaust, as well as getting involved in helping establish the State of Israel in 1948.
There has been much written about the fact that there were no demonstrations on behalf of European Jewry during World War II. This is a fallacious allegation. There were demonstrations, and we have a newsreel clip of one of them. It's 1 minute and 18 seconds, and you will see it at the famous actor Paul Muni, as well as the demonstration in which he spoke at Madison Square Garden. Here is that film clip of the demonstration on behalf of Soviet Jewry, which took place, rather European Jewry, which took place in Madison Square Garden during World War II. Here it is.
Solemn memorial service for Europe's murdered Jews. In New York's Madison Square Garden, two audiences totaling 40,000 see an impressive pageant. European rabbis who themselves escaped Hitler's ghettos, and the Torah, scrolls of ancient biblical law. Then the pageant salutes the Jews who have given their lives as soldiers of United Nations armies. Sponsored by the Committee for a Jewish Army of Stateless and Palestinian Jews, the pageant portrays the post-war peace table, with Jews who have died in many lands having no land to represent them. The voices of Europe's 2 million massacred Jews cry to the peacemakers, "Remember us, remember us." Now narrator Paul Muni.
There are 4 million Jews surviving in Europe. The Germans have promised to deliver to the world by the end of the year a Christmas package of 4 million dead Jews. And this is not a Jewish problem. It is a problem that belongs to humanity, and it is a challenge to the soul of man.
That was a demonstration before the Holocaust and during the Holocaust about what Jews were doing to protest what was going on in Germany. Mr. Ben Ami, in our previous segment with Dr. Riegner mentioned that Jews were powerless in this country. They couldn't get things done the way they can get done today. However, I believe there were proclamations made on behalf of the persecuted Jews. There was attention given to the Jews. Can you tell us about one proclamation that we're going to show up?
And any comments that you have on that demonstration?
To begin with, Dr. Riegner is wrong in his statement that Jews in this country during the first year of the war were afraid to demonstrate. There were 5,000 people who came to Manhattan Center in and outside to listen to Zev Jabotinsky in May 1940 and to Colonel Patterson, who called for the formation of a Jewish army. So there was no question of fear or whatever it is. And the same kind of meetings took place in other places. The point that is important is that the Jewish leadership, whatever it was then, it was a handful of people. Joseph Proskauer for the American Jewish Committee, Stephen Wise for the World Jewish Congress, American Jewish Congress, Zionist organization. He represented almost all other organizations. They were the people who kept down the profile of American Jewry. American Jewry was not organized. It was not organized in today's manner. Of course not. We agree on that. But the heart of the people was in the right place. Because when we decided that the time has come to take the core question of the Holocaust and the extermination and destruction of European Jewry out of the closet and out of the obituary page of the New York Times to make a public issue, and we organized the pageant Will Never Die, which traveled from one city to another with tens of thousands of people coming to watch it.
Was that with Ben Hecht's?
Ben Hecht's script. Then you saw that the people are ready to demonstrate. It wasn't that they were afraid. The leaders didn't call upon them.
In other words, that film clip we just saw with the demonstration was organized by you, that demonstration?
Right. It was organized by us under the auspices of the Committee for a Jewish Army. And at that day, Governor Dewey issued a proclamation calling the attention of the American public to what is going on in Europe and saying that we have to take steps to help the people over there. And you know what Stephen Wise did? You asked me a few minutes ago about Stephen Wise. He communicated with Governor Dewey and asked him not to call back the proclamation, not to release it.
Not to release it?
Not to release it, because it wasn't under the proper auspices.
You mean, what you're saying is that there was inter-organizational squabbling got in the way of saving Jews?
The squabble was very one-sided. We, our group, the Irgun delegation that worked with the Committee for a Jewish Army, and with the Emergency Committee to Save the Jewish People of Europe, did not squabble with others. We stayed away from the Jewish organizations.
All right, now let me ask you this. First of all, the question is, Lucy Davidowitz claims that, historian claims that everything could have been done to save European Jewry. At least she says that there's nothing more that could have been done to save it. You disagree with that categorically?
I totally disagree with that. Not enough was done. If whatever we did, which resulted in the War Refugee Board, for which we dedicated the whole year 1943, would have started by a combination of all Jewish organizations, things would have happened on a larger scale and earlier.
Off a few personalities in history. Churchill, quick view of him, 15 seconds.
He was dedicated to one thing, to defeat the Nazis. The Jews really didn't interest him.
What about Pope Pius XII?
Interested in maintaining the network and the establishment of the church. This was primary.
Anything to, as far as his sympathy towards the Jews that you're feeling on the matter?
I don't think he cared one way or another.
FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who all my grandfather all voted for.
He wanted to win the war, and he had a tough time. There was a strong isolationist movement in this country, and we're not going to muddy the water with Jewish issues.
What about the Orthodox rabbis who demonstrated in the Capitol, Rabbi Lazer
This
Silver?
was in conjunction with us. This demonstration was organized by us and the rabbis.
And
it was probably the only demonstration in Washington throughout the Holocaust. And it was very impressive. And nothing happened. And FDR ran away from the White House when they were supposed to come there. Sam Rosenman told him that he tried to stop the hordes from storming the White House, and he went to dedicate an airfield.
Congress and the State Department of the United States.
Don't mix them up.
All
The
right,
State Department was a catastrophe, especially as long as Breckinridge Long was in charge of the subject of European Jewry, immigration, and everything else. Congress and the Senate were good once we reached them, and we reached them. We started reaching them beginning in 1942 with a campaign for a Jewish army. From then on, they were the way. This was the way. You had to mobilize the American public. Stay away from the Jewish organizations. The Jewish masses will come with you. Go to Congress. Congress will force the executive, and this is what happened in January 44 when the War Refugee Board. But all this was at least a year too late, if not longer.
Mr. Ben Ami, before you documented about the friction between your group and, let's say, Stephen Weiss and other Jewish leaders, this friction also extended to Europe and also to Palestine before Israel was created, in the sense where Joel Brand, who was sent on a mission by Eichmann to rescue Jews and to trade Jews for trucks, was waylaid on that. Would you like to amplify about that, as well as attempts by your organization to rescue Jews even during the Holocaust? I'm talking about Dr. Williams Pearl's rescue of thousands of Jews.
The Brandt incident, by the way, it is not really known. You can find it in Brandt's memoirs, which he dictated to a friend of his, that Eri Jabotinsky, the son of Zev, and Joseph Klarman, who represented the revisionist movement in Istanbul, went on the train in Ankara and warned Joel Brandt not to proceed to Aleppo. And Joel Brandt didn't listen to them, and he explained it later. He said, how could I listen to these people who had political motives when the leaders, the recognized leaders of the Jewish Agency, have told me that I can go safely towards the border under British control? And he was caught and held back, and this was it.
What about demonstrations? Can you give us in 1 minute a scenario where a demonstration would have helped? What could have been done? Give us a 1 minute scenario how more Jews could have been saved.
I believe that if the Jewish leadership would have preached to the following, to the congregations, to the temples, to the organizations, that something must be done quickly and immediately, and petitions and demonstrations in Washington. And it is another fallacy that I think Yehuda Bauer came up with, that no Jew could have demonstrated during the war against FDR. Well, we didn't demonstrate against FDR. We demonstrated to save the Jews. There was no backlash to the rabbis on the steps of the Capitol. The demonstration was a positive one. Let's do something. It was fantastic. It was all over the newsreels and everywhere else. What was wrong with that? But Stephen Wise was getting old. He was getting sick. It wasn't Stephen Wise of 1933 anymore. He gave up. By this time, when it was 1941-42, the same letters that Riegner quoted, I'm familiar with all the letters. You read them carefully. It's pathetic. And he was the most powerful man in the American Jewish community.
Our guest is Yitzchak Ben Ami. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, along with Zev Brenner, will be back with some closing statements from Mr. Ben Ami. Obviously, there is 40 years later still no agreement among the protagonists of that era as to what happened and what could have been done. So we leave it to you, our viewers, to take this in and to make your own decisions and to increase your information on this subject any way that you can. We'll be back with some final thoughts right after the following messages.
Think kosher, think Jewish life with the annual International Kosher Food and Jewish Life Expo. And it's 4 times bigger and better than ever. Be there June 17th through 21st at the Javits Convention Center in New York. Don't miss the hundreds of gourmet kosher products to taste and enjoy. A galleria of art, Judaica books, religious articles, jewelry, giftware, and more. Entertainment, demonstrations, and special guests. Join us for this joyous celebration of Jewish life and heritage. Tickets are only $7, and children under 6 are free. Group rates for 30 or more are only $4. Call now to ensure your admission to the biggest and best Jewish life experience ever, the International Kosher Food and Jewish Life Expo. You can't afford to miss it.
This is Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. I want to tell you about our MS classes in Manhattan. I'll be teaching them on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. at the MS 34th Street headquarters in Manhattan. Some of the subjects will be reincarnation, male-female relationships in Judaism, answering missionaries, and Jewish business ethics in the Talmud. These are fascinating subjects, and if you are interested in taking these classes, call us at 212-772-0126. That's 212-772-0126. Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Subjects as you see on the screen. And our phone number again to attend these classes is 212-772-0126. And if you're interested, call us now. There are operators standing by. 772-0126.
Welcome back. This is Zev Brenner, along with Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. We're speaking with Yitzchak Ben Ami, a former member of the Irgun.
Mr. Ben Ami, in the first part of this program, we had on Gerhardt Riegner, who refuses to, who says that, if I remember correctly, that enough was not done, but he does not point an accusatory finger at American Jewish leadership. You are here in the last minute and a half that we have, and man who ran around this country and who watched the European Jewry die despite your pleas. Do you point an accusatory finger towards American Jewish leadership?
Of course I do. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind. As you asked me before, what keeps me going? Well, what keeps me going at my age is the feeling of duty that I have, that the record has to be straightened out. You see, all the history books that have appeared, Bauer, Lacour, Lucy Davidovich, you go down the line, they're all written by people who belong to the establishment. There is no anti-establishment or outside counter-establishment literature at all. My book is a unique one. And this is why it hasn't been reviewed in half of the Anglo-Jewish papers, or in the Hadassah News or Congress Weekly or commentary.
Do you believe there's a conspiracy against you in the Jewish establishment?
No, it's not a conspiracy.
Not to publicize your work?
It's not a conspiracy. They won't touch it. What for? They have to admit. They will have to admit failure on the attitude today towards Israel and the Likud government. It's all one story. It has never stopped.
I'd like to thank Mr. Yitzchak Ben Ami, author of the book Years of Wrath, Days of Glory, which is a fascinating story about that period of time in Jewish history, as well as a member of the Irgun, and which today is which is affiliated with the Herut party in Israel, the party of Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have brought you two pieces of living history, Gerhardt Riegner and Yitzchak Ben Ami. They were both trying to save European Jewry from two different perspectives, and they do not either agree with what the other did. What was the true answer? What would have saved European Jewry? Well, we leave it to you to decide. With Soviet Jews, Ethiopian Jews, and the very existence of the State of Israel, where do we go from here? For Zev Brenner, this is Rabbi Yaakov Spivak saying, Seid gesund, lehitraot, shalom al Yisrael, and most of all, my friend, chazak.
That soul that stood next to me so long ago on Mount Sinai, whatever happened to it? It's still there, and still my brother. He's never heard a Hebrew word. His parents changed his last name. Some may ignore him, but I am still for him. Our people are one and the same, 'cause he's my brother. I have no other. Our Father in heaven wants his family again. Kol Yisrael, Kol Yisrael Arevim, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh bo zeh. He's still struggling, groping for the truth. But I know that one day, with the help of all of us who care for him, he'll find it. Who cares what fortunes have caused him to run with the conforming pack? His great-grandfather learned Torah with mine. That soul now begs bring him back, 'cause he's my brother. I have no other. Our Father in heaven wants his family again. Kol Yisrael, Kol Yisrael Arevim, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh bo zeh.
Like gold medalist Jennifer Chandler, it takes precision to perform at this level. Here, the Canon AE-1 program performs, capturing Chandler's high diving artistry through Canon's high technology.
And it's so simple, you flip for